Apologies, Juretta.
The AFC's press release, and we are congratulating the Police Complaints Authority here. Only too recently, the Alliance for Change released a statement to the effect that the government and the Guyana Police Force must indicate whether a rogue squad exists within the Guyana Police Force's structure to corruptly harass and intimidate citizens. The AFC's opinion now is that it should have further questioned also if cover-ups to deny such an existence of a rogue squad is the new norm. It would be in the interest of the new leadership of the Guyana Police Force that it does everything to disassociate itself from being described as the new era. And by era, I mean ERROR and not ERA. The recent police complaints authorities supervised investigation into the murder of Bacchus by a rogue policeman and the attempted cover-up by two of his compadres, which otherwise would have not seen justice done, is pleasantly welcomed and embraced by the AFC. The AFC congratulates the Police Complaints Authority on this forthwith remedial action. The establishment of the Police Complaints Authority since 1989 was seen then as the mechanism for ensuring transparency and accountability and ultimately public confidence in the Guyana Police Force. Additionally, such an authority staff can ensure a weeding out of rogue elements and encourage professionalism within ranks and officers of the Guyana Police Force. This necessary guardrail in our security apparatus and its personnel must be further maintained and strengthened by the government providing more administrative and financial resources now that billions are available consequent upon the APNU-AFC signing that petroleum production agreement in 2016. Additionally, the recommendation of the Disciplined Forces Commission of 2004, which were substantially implemented in the coalition's APNU's term, must not be diluted in any way now that the authorities' operations are getting more dynamic and energetic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamrat. And can we go now to Jaretha Fernandes, who holds the new position of Deputy General Secretary.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone joining this afternoon. My statement is going to be looking at the state of the economy, and it goes, the AFC notes with growing concern the PPP's complete refusal to take any action to combat the growing inflation crisis. In the period since the PPP has assumed the reins of power, there has been a 21.5% increase in the cost of food. A family of 5 would now see their food budget moving from $100,000 per month to $121,500. Thousands of families in Guyana are now facing food insecurity. Now, recent reports show that inflation is only getting worse. In April of 2021, inflation stood at 2.8% compared to the year earlier. Now, in April 2022, inflation stood at 7.5% when compared to the year earlier. That's almost 3 times the inflation rate we have seen last year. At the current rate, we could see inflation go above 10% by the end of 2022. The PPP has promised 4.1% inflation in total by December 2022. But with inflation already reaching 3.2% in May, it is highly likely that we have already reached 4.1% inflation by today, July 8th. This out of Control inflation is having real and damaging impact on the standard of living of Guyanese families. It is directly impacting the quality and sometimes quantity of food in the family pot across the nation as parents struggle to provide for their families. 22% of Guyanese are now having issues feeding themselves and their families. This is according to the poll conducted by the IRI, which is the International Republican Institute. What stands out in this crisis is the PPP's total refusal to do anything about inflation. The PPP has instead sought to blame everything but its own actions for the inflation being experienced. Inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. In light of this fact, we must consider the fact that at the end of 2022, the PPP will have spent the same in 2.5 years that the APNU AFC spent in 5 years. A total of $1.26 trillion. This is a drastic increase in spending. If this drastic increase in spending came with equally drastic increase in the non-oil GDP, which is the only GDP figure that matters to the common man and woman, then things might have been different. But instead, this spending came hand in hand with economic stagnation. The last GDP figure released by the Ministry of Finance showed smaller GDP in 2021, that's non-oil GDP we're looking at, than we had in 2019. Furthermore, with a 51% reduction in rice production and 47.7% production level reduction in the sugar production industry, the AFC have no confidence that the GDP today has returned to 2019 levels as yet. The combination of high spending and economic stagnation, together with PPP's mismanagement, are the primary cause of inflation we see today. The AFC continues to call on PPP to take immediate actions to reduce the impact this inflation crisis is having on the people of Guyana. Thank you.
My apologies, folks. My internet, I'm out of Ghana. My internet is really bad. Can I ask Sharad to do his presentation? And if we disconnect, Jaretha, I'll ask you to do the questioning at the conference. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks, members of the media. The Alliance for Change is extremely concerned about the operations of GECOM and its readiness to organize and execute local government elections in particular, and after that, general and regional elections. And there are a couple of issues I would like to raise that is of concern to us as to why, in the first instance, the operations of GECOM and the refusal to review the operations in light of the last general and regional elections of March 2nd, 2020, we find as very, very worrisome. And just some of the issues we would have engaged during that period, that one would think we would want to review some of the systems we would have had in place. I wish to state that it was the duty of GECOM to look at a lot of issues during that recount process. And some of what the observation reports reveal are grave issues in and of themselves. It talked about ballots cast and at said elections, including reconciliation of ballots issued with ballots cast, destroyed, spoiled, stamped, and deemed necessary, their counterfoils, and all of those whole gamut of issues in and of themselves. And then we have issues, for instance, with the voters' list that we consider very sacrosanct to the very election and achieving the will of the people as a result of that or any electoral process. We wish to remind Guyanese that it was the chairman of GECOM, the Honorable Khalid Singh, who would have written to the General's Registrar's office asking a particular list of names would have been deceased on March 2nd, rather, 2020, when those elections were conducted. And the response came that there was substantive evidence there that those persons would have been deceased on March 2nd. In addition to that, the chairman of GCOM would have also written to the chief elections officer about people who would have been out of the jurisdiction. And again, the response was very substantive by way of the letter that the chairman of GCOM had raised. The point to be had in such instances, but that there were a lot of question marks over the operation of GCOM and its own ability even at that time to correct course. So we would have had that. We would have had some incidents too, for instance, at the GCOM Hatfield Street office, you know, and if we look closely at those events that transpired there, they almost resemble, Guyanese, the January 6th insurrection at the US State Capitol. And those are all issues we think that should come under a microscope as GCOM reviews its own internal mechanisms, its checks and balances. You know, there's a police report that is available online almost, in which one member of GCOM would have said to have taken equipment during that electoral process before it was concluded outside of the precincts of GCOM, and you have some allied issues that go with that. But of course, what is very, very germane to us here is a very open, free and fair electoral process. That brings us to the other aspect of the statement this afternoon. We had with us our legitimate interlocutors, as the CARICOM team dubbed themselves, the legitimate interlocutors. And this is why part of the statement during that period read that, you know, they regard themselves as the most legitimate interlocutors in that electoral process in terms of bringing that electoral process to a conclusion. I rehearsed that to say that in the report of that CARICOM team, they would have urged a rethinking and a relooking at our systems there at GCOM. As a matter of fact, I wish to quote a part of that. Well, I'm gonna not quote it directly. I've lost my notes here, but it talked about what a great tragedy it would be if the systems at GCOM were not relooked at. They talked about the heavy political hand that operate at GCOMs, and they of themselves in that CARICOM report recommending that the systems at GCOM is reviewed. A matter of fact, in one instance, calling for a political audit of GCOM. And so I stated that, we have stated that to say it is not just us as a political party, but the wider stakeholders that we have been talking to. You have that report also out there that almost encourages GCOM to reflect on the processes of the last election, so that in future elections, we can give very easily our electoral process a very, very clean bill of health. Again, folks, the Alliance for Change believes that any future elections in this country must begin with a clean, sanitized voters list. Kathy, if you're still with us.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Sharad, and thank you to the other presenters. Members of the media, please, now you can ask your questions to any one of the persons, representatives of the AFC on this press conference. Please just start by identifying yourself and the organization you represent. Sharad, you can assist me by just identifying if I miss any, the persons raising their hands. Thank you.
Great.
Adam Harris. Can you hear me?
Yes, Adam, thank you very much. Please go ahead.
All right, but can the panelists hear me?
Yes, you're hearing you, Adam.
All right. My name is Adam Harris, and I'm representing Guyana Post at the moment. My question is for party leader, Mr. Kemrat Ramjatan. Sir, you lauded the Police Complaints Authority. My question to you, sir, is when did the Police Complaints Authority get an investigative capability as opposed to supervising an investigation? And sir, are you satisfied with the quality of the investigation that led to the writing of the report by the Police Complaints Authority?
Adam, the Police Complaints Authority Act, I think it is Section 8 and probably Section 12, that indicates that they have the powers to supervise an investigation when a complaint is made. And from my understanding of what transpired, in view of the fact that there was an attempted cover-up by the police force itself in relation to this killing of Bacchus, they sent it there, just like I understand they sent it in the Orin Boston case, which also I think was then later supervised by the PCA, that led to a manslaughter charge against the policeman in that matter. As to whether I am satisfied, I will tell you what, it is far superior to what the police almost produced. And as against that which the Police Complaints Authority produced, I think it is far superior. And yes, to that extent, I would like to congratulate them. That was the whole tenor and scheme of the Police Complaints Authority's powers and duties. And when it would appear that the police force are having problems, and using that euphemistically, you can then send it there, and it was sent there as far as I understand.
Quick follow-up, sir.
We've lost the speaker at our end. We're gonna hold
Sorry?
The last one?
the speaker at our end. We're gonna hold to hear what the other question is.
We can hear you, Adam. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted a quick follow-up, sir. I don't know, Mr. Ramjatan doesn't look as though he's hearing me.
Let me double check.
What's happening?
System itself.
Sharad and Kemraj, are you hearing us?
In 1 second, Kathy, I can hear you faintly, but give us a second. The guy's gonna adjust the volume first.
Okay,
Where-
and
where did
maybe,
Kathy?
okay, Adam was saying that he wanted to offer a follow-up. Kemraj Ramjatan, are you hearing us clearly to receive
No,
his
I didn't
question?
hear the question. I didn't hear the follow-up
Okay,
question.
okay,
No,
good. So I
there was
think we're
none.
okay now. Adam, over to you.
Yes, yes. Sir, the findings of the report by the Police Complaints Authority. Sir, there
I'm not
were.
hearing them.
Mhm.
You know, this is work we should have done.
Are you, Ricky,
I
you
can
hearing?
hold,
Okay,
I can hold.
thanks. Thanks, Adam, and folks, I apologize. I know at 10 after 1, they were testing and everything seemed to be okay. Maybe I could see if, hold on, let me see.
Let's do this Zoom from home.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Mhm. Mr. Ramjatan?
Yes, yes, I'm hearing you now.
All right. I wanted to ask a follow-up, sir. And that follow-up has to do with the reports and the video that supported the shooting. First of all, that report never dealt with who gave the order, sir. From the investigation, it could not have been just 3 rogue cops and only one getting charged with murder. And as a lawyer, you would know that, sir. Why didn't the investigation go to the top to find out who issued or who sent out this group of policemen? And secondly, the investigation did not deal with the weapon that was supposed to have been in the possession of Mr. Bacchus. It turned out that that weapon wasn't working. And that was supposed to be the weapon from which he discharged a wrong, sir. So how could you be so satisfied with the report by the PCA?
Well, because of the fact that you have a situation whereby the three of them were indicating that they were being shot at by a weapon that was not working, obviously meant that they were lying about certain things. In truth, from what my understanding is, that they went there by themselves on some odious deal. And I rather suspect that at the trial, they can bring out all of that as to who gave them instructions and all to go there. But at this stage, when you use that kind of excessive force of 6 bullets in the person's body, 5 in his back and 1 in his chest, and with a gun that is now proven to be outside of working condition, the thing leaves a lot to be desired. And sometimes you have to bring to a certain line the investigation's end. Otherwise, if you've gone now and start asking who was the senior ranks that gave the instructions and you are not getting anywhere, you might very well find yourself not dealing with the actual shooting incident. And to that extent, yes, there can be a lot that is left undesirable about an investigation. But I rather suspect that the chairman, a very competent judge and lawyer, Mr. William Ramlal, would have done certain things to close those ends. I haven't seen the extensive report, but I rather suspect that the facts that we are seeing in the press and what I have heard from some internal sources does indicate that this investigation or supervised investigation was far superior, and that is why I say I am satisfied.
Thank you, comrade. Adam, any other follow-ups?
No, I see Dennis. Dennis is waiting to get his question.
Oh, please, I'm having difficulty seeing the hands up. I appreciate your assistance. Yes, Dennis, go right ahead, please. And anyone after, just jump in. Dennis, Dennis, we're not hearing you.
Are you hearing me?
We're hearing you now. Please go ahead
Yes,
with your question.
Yes, I would like to know just clarity on Mr. Duncan's last remark before you began question time. What mechanisms would he like to see be put in place to clean up the voters list in light of the constitutional requirement that the national database of registrants cannot be in any way changed? And secondly, to Mr. Ramchitan, when last has the Alliance for Change had talks across the table with the APLU being the major coalition partner?
What?
When
last have
last,
you had inter-coalition talks between your party and APLU?
well, that first question I can answer,
Yes,
Dennis,
Kathy,
if
go
you're
right ahead.
hearing me.
Yeah.
It would be just about 5 or 6 weeks ago. Mr. Ramchitan, myself, and former GS David Patterson had a meeting with the leader of the opposition, Mr. Aubrey Norton. Regrettably, the follow-up discussion is still to be scheduled. As you know, Mr. Norton had been traveling overseas. So I would say it's about 5 or 6 weeks ago. The exact date doesn't come to mind, but it's just about that. And we had, it was a fairly cordial meeting, and we were going through some of the current issues that we're dealing with.
I would like to give an update on that score, Kathy. And the proposal is that we meet on Monday, now that
Okay.
the leader of the opposition is back in the country, and the leadership of the AFC has been asked, we're going to convene a time for Monday, this coming Monday. We just got something from one of their contact persons in relation to that meeting.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Sharad seems to be having a very difficult time with a cough of sorts. Kamraj, I don't know if you would like to tackle Dennis's other question, which was about recommendations we would want to make with regards to our desire to see the list cleansed. Of course, he went to what the current requirements are. I don't know, Dennis, do you want to ask the question again to Mr. Ramjatan, just for clarity?
Yes, Mr. Ramjatan. Well, essentially, Mrs. Hughes covered it for the most part, but I was asking the question against the background of the fact that the Constitution prohibits any change to the national database of registrants. What mechanisms would you like to see be used to cleanse the list? And as a brief follow-up to your last response, in the meeting that was held a few weeks ago and the one that's coming up, did Mr. Norton bring with him a team, or was it himself?
Well, look, I only last night, Dennis, was reading the decision of Justice Saunders from the CCJ in relation to some elections petitions out of Dominica. And in his commentary at the bottom end, what we normally call, important obiter, he was indicating, although the CCJ threw out that elections petition, he was indicating that the correct and accurate list of voters was a serious allegation being made by the petitioners, in that case out of Dominica, and that the powers that be must ensure that there is a pure list of voters. As one, although they knocked off the petition, he made some very serious commentary. We regard that as obiter dicta in law, and he was indicating that you have to get your list right. And we are indicating that there must be some investigation, internal, as Mr. Vincent Alexander has been calling for, so that we will get the correct list. And we must not utilize legal tabulisms, the generic legalisms, to say that we can't make more pure that list. That list got a lot of dead people in it. It got a lot of people who are not living in Guyana, and so on. And so it is important that, notwithstanding all of that, which you tell about that we can't do anything, that GCOM and all its commissioners and its entire staff make sure that that list, voters list, is purified, and so that it could become acceptable and credible. Otherwise, you might very well have it a violation of the obiter from senior judges from the CCJ, like Justice Anderson.
Dennis, if I can add to that, one of the recommendations that we feel we would like to make is that the procedures for dealing with persons that are deceased and their removal from the list be easier and maybe a little more user-friendly. And by that, I want to share that, imagine there are a large number of Guyanese persons who unfortunately have had members and relatives that have passed away out of Guyana. Quite often they might have been receiving medical treatment. And one of the things that we note is that, for example, one may have just one certified copy, which is, let's say, from a district or a place in the US. That is a death certificate that it has all the requisite, certification behind it. But our registry requires that that document be left with them. They don't have a process of looking at an authentic US death certificate and accepting that, even if they were to take their own copy of it. Copies are not acceptable, at least up to about 3 years ago when I made a personal investigation. And so when you have persons that are actually dealing with estate matters and other matters, they need that death certificate. And unless you've been fortunate enough or write back to the state to get extra copies, that is a challenge. And so we're saying that maybe we could examine the procedures and go even further by encouraging, advertising what those requirements are, and encouraging people to step forward with the documents that for their relatives that have passed away. And that would be a way of at least dealing with some of the persons that are deceased. Your other question were, who were the representatives on the APNU side at the last meeting? And they were Mrs. Volda Lawrence and also the new General Secretary, Geeta Chandan Edwards. They were the team on the APNU side. Forgive me, I can't see if any hands are up. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to ask?
Yes, if nobody, I'll defer to anybody else who comes up. But this is for Ms. Jaretta Fernandez. Ma'am, you were talking, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Jaretta, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, she can hear you.
All right. You were talking about the rampant cost of living, spiraling inflation, and all of this. At the same time, the government is doling out money. What impact will that big handout of money, the temporary jobs and all of that have on your inflation?
That's a good question.
Mm.
Well, the first thing is that I want to address the name that is being
Doled out.
doled out as you referred it so correctly, is that it is not done in any structured way. We have been talking about this consistently. And some of the pointers we have currently, as we're speaking right now, within the various regions, the hinterland and Riverine $25,000 cash grant is being shared out in very haphazard manners. Political operatives being utilized there very heavily to get those money out and about. Once the government consistently, as it is doing right now, continue to go in that direction, they're not helping the cause altogether. But what I think one of the focus that we want to see being made by the administration right now as it relates to the rising cost, the consistent rising cost. And I want people to understand very clearly, I know the report that has been circulating all over spoke about the fact that the inflation rate was 1.7% in the first quarter, and it was expected to go, as the report says, at the end of the year to 4.1%. And a lot of persons felt, that's really bad. A lot of reports was going on that matter, but people need to have a total grasp of what is going on. The fact that that was just in the first quarter report. And as it is right now, reports coming out from the Bureau of Statistics, more updated reports will tell you that of May in 2022, that inflation rate from January to May would have been at a rate of 3.2%. And as of right now, we're already in July. It's a good estimation if you want to say it may already have gotten to that 4.1%. So highly understated, I would say. But I think the government's approach that it is right now with the cash grant and doling out the money, it is laced with corruption. It's the first thing I want to say. I've been speaking about it every single time they go through that process, they go through it, and they add bureaucratic constraints that is going to give a pathway to corruption. I even spoke about that when it came to the school children's $30,000 that they're supposed to be receiving there, passed in the National Assembly without any conditionalities or anything like that. But now it is out there. You hear that a member is going to go around to say that they have to return it. When you put those bureaucratic processes attached to what should have been simple processes, you complicate the whole thing. So now monies are being spent while west without any proper structure, avenues for corruption and saying all of that. But what I do believe when it comes to inflation, one of the things that we need to be seeing from the administration to deal with all of this is a structured approach when it comes to wages and salaries. And this is something that we're not looking at. And they cannot come and say to us that putting an increasing person's wages and salaries is going to make the inflation rate rise. And I'm saying that in just to explain to you how that works with your question. It's not going to increase it. And we have proof under the APNU AFC coalition. Wages and salary consistently increased,
And there was no
but
inflation.
the inflation was constant. At one time, you had almost no inflation, coming at a rate of 0.9%. So that level, there is so much more to what is going on. And when it comes, I'm saying that to say to you, sir, that it is not totally that. I want to say that it's not totally that. There's a whole lot more attached to it. If we're looking at the Bank of Guyana policy, they are central banks throughout the world when they're dealing with the inflation rates, and so they are increasing interest rates and so
We are not
forth.
doing that.
Here in Guyana, we're doing the complete opposite. So the government of Guyana needs to come to the people and say, why are we going down with these measures and opposed to measures being instituted throughout the length and breadth of the world? So a whole lot more questions than answers. There's no transparency. There's definitely no answers being given. But I do want to say that at this point in time, we are pleading with the administration to make sure that they think very hard and long when it comes to the survival of poor people, the ordinary citizens of this country, and look at structured mechanisms, especially when it comes to their wages and salaries.
So are
If
you
I
saying?
may, Kathy, if I may add, Adam, that we have seen that there's no mechanism in place to measure the cost of living. There's no system that can control the level of cost of living, despite Jurita, despite the removal of certain taxes on certain goods and items. So there are about over 800 unanswered questions in Parliament that we are trying to get answered, and there's no response to them. So there's no system in place, and as Judy said, corruption, but accountability is not there. I just want to add that piece.
But I have to add, and thank you so much, Ricky, for going down that line. I want to add, folks, that if we were to go into the budget of 2022 and the budget speech as presented in the National Assembly back in February, you would go to the section that specifically dealt with how they plan to ease cost of living of Guyanese, and they went through a series of things talking about farmers market. They have been going around looking at the farmers market. One of the most consistent measures thus far as it comes to the inflation and price of goods and services is being measured with the use of actual greens and provisions on the market. So that has been a complete failure. This is the structure they have implemented it through. They also went through things like reducing the cost of fuel. This is something that they presented
Remove the tax
in their
completely.
budget. We now know that the excise tax, it's that zero and all of that, still did not put any real meaning to the reduction in that cost altogether. Because even actually, now that the cost is going back up, instead of giving any new directive, instead of looking at the best practices that's been experienced throughout the world, what we're hearing now is that, well, there's nothing more that could be done from the arm of government, which is a complete fallacy. When it comes to other measures of other mechanisms to cost of living reduction has been highlighted here in the budget. They talk about the $5 billion to be the cost of intervention and so forth. Now this is the money, ladies and gentlemen, we have been saying that I've said it from day one that this is being utilized in my assessment as a slush fund. No real structure, the way in which they're doing it, they're using their political operatives, as I said earlier, to make sure that they go out into the communities and do all that.
It's buying the votes.
They're trying desperately to buy the vote, and we cannot just sit back and say that it is okay. We consistently try to explain to Guyanese that this is not failing in any way, shape, or form. It is an immediate temporary relief to the struggle that we're feeling for those of you who do get that, for those persons who do get that benefit. But that is as far as it goes, probably 2 to 3 days at most, especially when it comes to the inflation rate right now. And as I just pointed out, the inflation rate from the period and the PPP has assumed forward is actually 21.5% increase in food items, specifically for food items. So that's the rate we're at right now. Very, very concerning, to say the least.
Thank you,
So then,
Teresa. Any other questions? I know we want to be winding up soon.
Yeah, I mean, are you
Hello?
saying that the, sorry. Are you saying that the
Good
cash
afternoon.
grant? Oh, okay.
All right, Lakeram from the Starboard News. Is everybody hearing me?
Yes,
not
we
sure.
are, Lake Ram.
Was that?
Yes, we can hear you, Lake Ram.
Okay, Mr. Ramchatan, over the past week, we've seen some reports of a statement you allegedly made in relation to the AFC, the Cummingsburg Accord with the APNU. I'm just trying to find out whether there's any truth to those reports that the AFC will be walking away from this agreement with the APNU, and if yes, what are some of the reasons behind that? Because the party would have reported after its Congress.
I'm not hearing you at all.
I think what.
I can-
At this point, for that particular reporter, is it our chairman Kathy used to probably just ask the question back to us.
Could Kati, could you
Sure. Kamraj, he's asking about the recent reports about the Cummingsburg Accord and your statement on that program that the AFC would be leaving the alliance. Lakeram, would that be more or less what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes.
the reasons.
Kamraj, I don't know if you would want me to
Kati, you can
answer
answer
that
that better than I
question.
do.
Okay. I
Go ahead,
can
Kathy.
go ahead. I can go ahead. So, Lakeram, as I think that question needs to be answered in a little more of a holistic approach. At our national conference, well, let me start off by saying that the issue of our participation in the coalition with APNU has always been an issue that is on the agenda of members, supporters, and of course, the management at the Alliance for Change. I want to start off by saying that we believe in coalition politics. History, of course, in 2015 gave us another opportunity to be part of a coalition. Now, the Cummingsburg Accord and its revisions were really defined and designed for a partnership that was based for the parties being in government. And at our national conference, we recognized that the Cummingsburg Accord is actually going to expire at the end of this year. And the decision that our national conference and the 200 odd members, delegates representing our various groups made was that the decision was that we would not leave we would not consider leaving the coalition prior to the expiration of that agreement. So we have an agreement that we're a member of the coalition in place until the end of this year. And our party agreed that we are going to stay until the end of the year when it expires. Now, we perceive that coalition, as I've said, coalition politics are very important to us. We accept that there have been challenges in the relationship that we've had with with APNU. We accept that in most coalitions, the smaller party quite often is subject to the perception of them being no longer strong, no longer dynamic, no longer being a viable partner according to some. We don't agree with that, although it might be the perception. And one of the things that AFC has done right now is that we are looking inwards. This is the time that we want to rebuild our party. This is the time where we are looking, our focus is on rebuilding our groups, getting back onto the ground. And so, although there's no actual definitive idea as to what will happen post December 31st, we do accept that there's a very strong level of support for us to spend the next 2 years rebuilding, looking internally, so that by 2024, we would have regained our strength. And that is when we figure we would be looking at how new coalitions could be formed, what it could look like. So I think that kind of answers the question. I don't know if there's anything else, Mr. Ramjatan, or anyone at the head table would want to add to that. But Lekram, I think that would be our answer.
A follow-up,
I would
please.
like to state this just for a little bit more clarity. Thank you so much to Chairman for that very clear explanation. But when it comes to the media personality, I want to just state with absolute clarity, you know, as the National Conference of the Alliance to Change, the highest decision-making body of the Alliance to Change, met and made a decision. And the decision is, and I just want to be very clear, word for word, what that is. It says the option chosen there and voted by the overwhelming majority there is that, and it reads, stay in a revised political alliance with APNU, whether coalition or a parliamentary cooperation agreement. But the AFC must demand and secure a form agreement and structure for it to have greater influence on policy positions and political action within the alliance, while maintaining its independence and rebranding and regaining its identity. And I want to just say at this point in time, the APNU plus AFC coalition, I think that it is absolutely necessary, and the least expectation that the public should have from us is that each of the political parties involved would be going out there and independently building and working on the ground so as to strengthen the work, so as to strengthen the coalition altogether. It is only then that we will see the true strength of the APNU plus AFC coalition. So that is our intention, and that is how the National Conference has so mandated the Alliance to Change as in moving forward.
Thank you, Jarita, for having access to that document and being able to read it. Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
Yes,
Dennis said,
Yes, Mr. Ramstein, I know that your party says that it believes, excuse me, in coalition politics. But how flexible are you to a coalition with the People's Progressive Party? And also going back to the talks with the APNU, what are some of the agenda items that form the debate?
Well, you know, I didn't get to hear the last part of the question, but quite frankly, coalition with the PPP has got to be, quite frankly, a non-starter. But if they do good things, as an Alliance for Change independent party, we are going to support them. If they will ensure that they do far more structured distribution of the oil monies so that every Guyanese can equally gain, I am telling you, we will support that. If they are not corrupt like they have in the Sugate matters, the Sugate matter, and they start becoming, as a political party, robust and muscular enough to get rid of people who talking to Sue, whether in his mansion or an aperture that connects his mansion to Sue's residence, certainly we will support that. But tying bundle with them at a political level for coalition politics purposes, I doubt it. I doubt it very much. And it will be a non-starter.
Maybe I could add that we have very little in common with the PPP at this point in time. So therefore, the points of any kind of engagement would be very, 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 very lukewarm. Remote. We can actually share, though, Dennis, that we have discussed that part of our agenda of activities going forward will be reaching out to some of the smaller parties that emerged in the wake of the election. We regret that the majority of them seem to have fizzled away. But certainly we want to have more discussions with existing civil society groups, any of the smaller parties, even the trade unions. We've been discussing that we will be going out and engaging those organizations. Okay, I think Adam had a follow-up question, and we will make that the last question, if I'm not mistaken. We're winding down. So Adam?
Yeah, ma'am. But if there is anyone else who wanted to, I can defer.
Okay, is there anybody else that wants to jump in?
I
Forgive
think
me,
Dennis, Lekram here. I think Dennis's question to Mr. Ramjitan about the agenda, it was in relation to Monday's meeting with the APNU, the leader of the opposition, if there's been an agenda set as yet for that meeting.
And what was discussed in the previous meeting?
I am certain that it's going to be a very meaningful agenda that we'll have. I do not wish to share that with you now.
Yep.
All right.
And
All right.
any other questions?
Yes, I wanted to ask Joretta. You can hear me, Joretta?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right. I wanted to ask you, what is the impact, or what do you think has been the impact of the cash grants and the various handouts on the rising cost of living and rising inflation?
What has been the impact of the handouts on the rising cost of living?
On an inflation.
Okay, well, what I have to say right about now, when it comes to the impact of the handouts, when it comes to the rising cost of living, it's practically non-impactful. And I say that with taking in everything into consideration. As I said a little earlier, what we are seeing with these cash grants and handouts, it's a temporary, immediate temporary relief, and that's as far as it goes. It doesn't help the situation in anywhere because it is not done in any structured way. And also it is not done, it is being done rather in a very biased manner. Communities altogether are not seeing the same benefits and all of that.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, I am not an economist, but I'll tell you this, Adam. When you start doling out monies as you're doing, and not with the structured way that Joretta has spoken, it means that lots more money are chasing the same amount of goods. And if more money are chasing the same amount of goods, that has an inflationary spike by itself. I mean, that's economics 100. And I did that at the University of Ghana, not the University of Fife. So that is an important point. The other aspect of the matter has to do with that which is happening internationally, as was mentioned. We generally, in these third world countries, would look upon a number of things that are being done internationally. And it would seem that this administration do not want to get there in relation to its reserve or the value of the dollar of Guyana and a number of other things. And that is why they're not even considering, even giving it consideration, that thing called interest rates. They are scared of it. And so we are not going to get at least a more effective or effectual mechanism to deal with inflation in Ghana, because the Jagdeo kind of economic theory is that you don't even go there. You mustn't even touch that with a 40-foot pole.
Well, I think, if I can add to that specific context, add context to that specific point, I want to say that, and I see the question here tying into whether or not, you know, these handouts are responsible for the inflation that we're seeing. right now. And I just want to make the point that as being highlighted in the budget, but the budgetary allocation when it comes to specific amounts being put towards cost of living reduction, that was a $5 billion in total. That was the budgeted amount. And I want to say, let us not think for 1 second that that specific amount of money could be responsible for the level of inflation
No,
that
it
we're
doesn't.
seeing. But what more so, as I pointed out in the statement that I read, as I pointed out, one of the things that persons need to be very keen to realize is since the PPP took office in 2020, as budgeted by them at the ending of 2022, they would have spent the same amount of money that they would have budgeted the same amount of money that the coalition budgeted over a 5-year period of time. These are the numbers that we need to be paying very keen attention to, as opposed to what we said. And if I can just go through, because I'm sure I have it here. Yes. 2015, you had your budget looking at 221 billion. Your 2016, 230 billion. 2017, 250. 2018, 267. 2019, 300. PPP then comes, that's just about $1.2 trillion altogether. PPP then comes into office there. You have a 2020 budget of 329.5 billion. 2021 budget of 383.1 billion, and then there comes 2022 budget that we're in here that is looking at $552.9 billion, taking that up to $1.2 trillion again. And I want persons to understand. So when we're looking at these little handles that they're going, it is a drop in the ocean as compared to the magnitude of the spending and the money that have been injected otherwise into the economy. And I just want persons to not don't fixate on that little bit of corruption that they're doing there with the cash grant, basically sending some hush money into the pockets of their supporters. And that's my take on it.
No, that's correct. That's correct. I agree with that. And to the extent then that, but it is billions of dollars that they're spending and giving away,
Yeah.
And then we're not getting a computation of how much the hampers cost.
Accountability.
Zero accountability, zero structure, corruption, all over.
All right.
Okay, any other questions?
Kathy, before you go, before we close our presentation, tomorrow, our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world will be celebrating what we call Qurbani. And we just want to take, the Alliance for Change want to take the opportunity to wish our Muslim brothers and sisters in Guyana happy Eid Mubarak. And we wish everyone peace and happiness, and ensure that tomorrow's sacrifice will be a blessing to Guyana.
Thanks.
Thank you very much to Ricky. Thank you to the team. And most importantly, thank you very much to the media. And we do apologize again for the technical difficulties we experienced today. Thank you and stay safe.
Thanks.